Welcome to the Weekly Lead. I'm Pastor Becky Tirabassi, and every week I want to encourage you to be a leader in your sphere of influence. Will you join me for this week's message? As you can imagine, the Weekly Lead should have something to say to leaders about leadership, don't you think? Well, I have for many years been a youth worker and then a youth leader and then a youth pastor. So that meant I was constantly inviting other young adults into leadership roles where they could mentor, encourage, pray for, walk alongside of students. Then I became a pastor of a church, and I continued to use one of the same resources in growing, developing, encouraging men and women to become spiritual leaders. The book is called Spiritual Leadership, and on occasion I have shared many of the highlights from this book over the past few years on my Weekly Lead podcast. But in light of the fact that so many of young men and women are now, I think, learning to grow in their relationship with God, wanting to actively take leadership, live in ways that are different and above the culture, I thought it'd be a wonderful podcast to share from Spiritual Leadership by J. Oswald Sanders. If you are a parent of an adult, young adult, if you are a parent of a teenager or a young person, if you are in a position of employment as an employer or supervisor in a workplace, if you are on a college campus and either are an instructor or a resident advisor, if you are in management, it is a fabulous book. And you might think, well, why would I want to take spiritual leadership into my secular workplace, if in fact it is secular, or my sphere of influence? I wanted to share from the chapter, Can You Become a Leader? Because I think what J. Oswald Sanders has done has taken illustrations using and saying that people in every aspect or walk of life have an opportunity to be leaders using spiritual principles, and spiritual leaders should be using character effectiveness skills in order to enhance their spiritual leadership. So let me rephrase that. Whether you're a spiritual leader using character traits to improve your leadership, or you're in secular leadership as a Christian and want to use your spiritual traits to enhance your leadership, both are found in this book. I think it's a trade-off. So believe it or not, J. Oswald Sanders writes in bullet points, ways to investigate your potential as a leader. And you're going to be very surprised. Very few of them, if any of them, have a biblical principle or verse next to them. So it says, leadership qualities are always important, but too often the skills lie dormant and undiscovered. We should be able, though, to detect leadership potential in others. And that's why I think you're going to love the bullet list. So grab a pen and paper. And bullet number 1, if you are going to be, or have the potential to be, or can you become a great leader, not even a spiritual leader, a great leader, the first question you should be asking yourself, have I ever broken a bad habit? I said that correctly. Ask yourself, have you ever broken a bad habit? Meaning, have you taken control of a bad habit and turned it into a nominal habit or a good habit? J. Oswald Sanders says, to lead others, you must master your appetites. Second question to ask yourself, if you desire to become a leader of your children, of your family, co-workers on your campus? Do you keep self-control when things go wrong? Sanders says the leader who loses control under adversity forfeits respect and influence. A leader must be calm in crisis and resilient in disappointment. Boy, if you've read Henrietta Mears's list of 10 Commandments in a number of her books, but one of them by about Bill Bright that I mentioned previously on the Weekly Lead is Amazing Faith. And she, Henrietta Mears, says the same thing about leaders. You must not let another person know you are disappointed in them. That's one of her 10 commandments on leadership. Now you can see I'm not giving you biblical principles. I'm giving you biblical presentation of how God would work in you in a non-spiritual setting. Do you think independently was a question you can ask yourself. Okay, I love this one. Are you decisive, in other words? A leader cannot wait for others to make up his or her mind. I think that's interesting. A leader must use the best ideas of others to make decisions. In other words, can you think outside the box? I love that question. The next question, can you handle criticism? Well, it's very difficult for most of us, but Sanders says the humble person can learn from petty criticism, even malicious criticism. That's a tough one, but it shows maturity and leadership potential. Remember, that was the question of the chapter. Can you become a leader? It also asks, can you turn disappointment into creative new opportunity? That's a big one, and I see it even in my own life when I've really come so far, lost my footing, and need to regroup. Can I regroup pretty quickly? Can I give a direction that is no longer going that way, a new course? Can I get going right away, or do I stay stuck? Wow. How about this one? Can you accept opposition to your viewpoint, or do you immediately take offense? Here was a point Oswald Sanders makes, J. Oswald Sanders, and it's true, and it's perhaps I say this to comfort you. Leaders always face opposition, so it doesn't mean that when you're a leader, you will not face opposition. It means, can you accept opposition and rally them, unite them, take their viewpoint without maybe turning all of it away, using a portion of it? Here's another great question to ask yourself if you want to become a leader. Can you make and keep friends? It's probably a red flag when someone says to you, oh, I used to know them. Oh, I used to be friends with them. Oh, I used to be in their group. Oh, I used to be. And they have no string of friends over 5 years and 10 years and 15 years or 20 years. Just a question to ask yourself. If you're quickly burning bridges all the time and have no long bridges to walk down, you may need to, and I don't mean to say rethink this, but you need to reevaluate how you can make and keep friends. All right, here's another one. Are you interested in all types of people? Are you tactful when someone with less than or more than comes into your presence? Do you stare? Do you move away? Do you include? Do you find ways to include all types of people in what you're doing? And I think that's especially important for a youth worker. I remember when I was a cheerleading coach, I had a certain group of people. They made the team, and I coached them. And they were somewhat of an exclusive group. When I was a youth worker, there was no exclusivity. You never walked in the room and got more of my attention or were more important or were a part of my team. Every single person walks in the room like they do at my church, and I try to introduce them to 2 or 3 other people who are near their age, who seem to have something of interest that they have interest in, or if they know nobody, I ask someone, hey, would you mind sitting with this brand new person, and I'll also go up to people sitting in front of each other and in back of each other and say, hey, why don't you introduce yourself? Often people will find a commonality, and that's just being interested in people from all walks of life. Just a few more questions that you can ask yourself if you're thinking of becoming a leader, want to become a leader, applying for leadership. I mean, we have prayer ministry in our church. That's a leader. You want to know what we might ask that person? Can you forgive? It doesn't really help to have a person on the prayer team who holds grudges and resentments, who harbors ill feelings towards someone who's hurt them. So, are you quick to forgive? Can you forgive? Do you forgive easily? That's a quality of a leader. And of course, that would be a spiritual quality in any setting, secular or sacred. Here's another question. Is your will strong and steady? Boy, that's a good one. J. Oswald Sanders says, leaders cannot vacillate and drift with the wind. In other words, when you make a decision, you have to stick with it. When you set a group of rules, you have to stay with them. And of course, you can change them with the group or with notice, but you can't flip-flop and pretend you didn't say anything or didn't have a standard that not everyone has to keep. That's a good question to ask yourself. Is my will strong and steady? Here's the last one. This is great. If you cannot keep a secret, do not try to lead. I know you've heard me say that one before. If you cannot keep a secret, do not try to lead. I learned that from my husband and from my work in seminary and chaplaincy. The chaplain is a confidential person with whom you can counsel or pray with, and therefore whatever you share with them, they don't share with other people. And we know that in most settings, people will easily or casually share private prayer requests or things told to them in confidence. J. Oswald Sanders said, don't even put a person on your team if they cannot keep a secret. Well, I hope you've been encouraged by, I think there were 10 skills or traits from the book Spiritual Leadership in answer to the question, can you become a leader? And I pray with all my heart that one of the things you would do was take to heart the call to leadership and lead a weekly prayer meeting. You know, you can always get from me my ebook, How to Lead an Extraordinary Prayer Meeting. Just email media, MEDIA, at BeckyTirabassi.com, and I will get that to you, or my office will get that to you right away. You are loved, and I hope encouraged, and I hope you soon become a leader. Amen? Amen. I hope you've been encouraged by this message, and I hope you join me weekly for the Weekly Lead Podcast. Meanwhile, follow me daily on Instagram. The link is in the bio with everything you need to become a weekly leader.